On the previous lesson, we tackled about research and librarianship. Let us recap. It was believed that there is no one definition of research, in part because there is more than one kind. There are two major types of research: the basic research and applied research. The other types of research are quantitative research and qualitative research. So, before we proceed to our lesson for today, I will introduce myself first. Hi, I am Melos M. de los Reyes, a third-year BLIS student. So, for today's lesson, we are heading up to the Chapter 2 of Basic Research Method for Librarians, class entitled Developing the Research Study. The first question that every researcher may well ask is, where do I begin? Or, in other words, where does the planning begin? Liddy and Amrod will answer this question, I quote, by asking questions we strike the first spark, igniting a chain reaction that leads to the research process. An inquisitive mind is the beginning of research. New knowledge has been sought either by means of deductive logic or through the use of inductive reasoning. Deductive research or systematic logic was developed by Aristotle, which characterized the use of the syllogism. A syllogism starts with a basic premise, which is then logically applied to a particular case. Statement 1 says all men are mortal. Statement 2 says John Doe is man. Therefore, John Doe is mortal. The truth of the conclusion obviously depends upon the truth of the basic premise. In contrast to the deductive method, the inductive reasoning proceeds from particular instances to general principles or from facts to theories. Statement 1 says John Doe is mortal, then observe a number of other men as well. Statement 2 says all of the observed men were mortals. Therefore, all men are mortals. The obvious limitation of this method is that it is virtually impossible to observe all of the instances supporting the inductive generalization. Let us consider one more example which may help to illustrate the distinction between deductive and inductive logic. So let's conduct an experiment. Counting a basket of mangoes, you want to check whether they are ripe or raw. One can find out by observing the mangoes individually, so we start the process. We pick up the mango from the basket and observe it. Let's see, we find the mango to be raw. Then we pick up another mango from the basket and observe it and find that it's raw as well. Many of us would conclude that all mangoes in the baskets are raw. So, what exactly the point is? So, to examine the couple of mangoes in the basket and accordingly arrive at the general conclusion. So, what is the conclusion? This generalized the idea by saying that all the mangoes in the basket are raw. So, by observing a specific outcome of the experiment, we concluded the observation in a generalized form. This approach of reasoning from specific to general is what we call as inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning is logically true, but may or may not be realistically true. So what does that mean? Let's have some examples. Statement 1 says mango is a fruit. Statement 2 says the box is full of fruits. We try to draw a conclusion from these two statements. From these statements, we draw the conclusions the box is full of mangoes. The statement 1 and 2 are true, but the conclusion is wrong. Although logically true can be false if the basket contains any other fruits aside from mangoes. It's logically true, but not definitely true. On the other hand, we have a deductive reasoning where the approach is from general argument to specific conclusion, and unlike inductive reasoning, the deductive reasoning is always true. So let's have some example. Statement 1 says all mangoes are fruits. Statement 2 says all fruits have seeds. What conclusion can we draw of these two statements? We can draw a conclusion saying mangoes have seeds. The statement 1 and 2 are true, and the conclusion is also will always be true. I hope that these two examples gives you a clear idea about its differences. Scientific method is a set of procedures that scientists follows in order to gain knowledge about the world. However, the steps involved in the scientific method vary widely among the different scientific disciplines. Chemists follow the method a bit differently than psychologists. Geologists and botanists have their own unique methods. So, is there really one scientific method that encompasses all of science? So, let's all find out for further discussion. There are 6 key steps characterize the scientific method. The first step is the question. Second is hypothesis. Third is experiment. Fourth is observation. Fifth is analysis. And lastly is the conclusion. So the question, a scientist proposes the problem that he wants to solve. A well-conceived question usually leads to a hypothesis. A hypothesis is a potential answer to the question at hand. Sometimes hypothesis looks more like prediction, according to the scientist. The scientist, what the outcome will be when he tests his hypothesis. The scientist, this is also called the experiment. The experiments are ordered investigations that are intended to prove or disprove a hypothesis. Important data comes from performing an experiment. The scientist has to make observation of the result that he gets from the experiment. Observation is a statement of knowledge through the senses or through the use of scientific equipment. Observations are crucial for collecting data. Once the results are in, the scientist must begin his analysis data. Analysis, comparing the results of the experiment to the prediction posed by the hypothesis. Based on the observation he made, the scientist has to determine whether his hypothesis was correct. That he sums up his findings with the conclusions. The conclusion of scientific process is a statement of whether the original hypothesis was supported or refuted by the observation gathered. The scientific method usually employs all the 6 steps we tackled, but the steps don't always occur in the same order. Real and professional researchers may go back and repeat steps many times before they come to any conclusion.